Bruh. Hello everyone, and welcome to Monday's stream. Right on time. Ooh. Probably I should not be showing my desktop there. Yeah, that's fine. That's better. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Yeah. I had to deal with my... So I had to adult for a weekend because my sink got... Well, the pipes behind my kitchen sink were completely just clogged, but it's not really a clog. It's a problem of the people that made my kitchen. They were absolute idiots, and yeah, I had to call a plumber, which of course takes a while to get to, and they showed up this morning at 8, which is great. But for the weekend I had to deal with the fact that I couldn't use my kitchen sink. That was amazing. Oh. They never tell you that. When you're a kid, they never tell you that you have to care about this stuff at some point in your life. It just happens automatically, right? And suddenly you have to deal with it. Oh, God. Like, my parents never told me that at some point I'd have to care about buying a mattress. You don't expect that to happen, right? And instead, you have to care about that. Oh. In any case, I was able to actually spend some time on the VODs this weekend, and I published a couple of them from the past couple of weeks. I'm almost on par with the... Yeah, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them still pending. So it should be fine. At some point, the Amberol playlist should be complete in a couple of days. I'll try to get that done by the next stream, and then we're gonna deal with the rest. Oh. Yeah, if you start streaming for like more than a couple of times per week, then you will have to deal with the fact that this whole thing of publishing the VODs takes time. Who would have thought? Because it's not just a matter of dumping them onto YouTube. You have to go through them and then add the chapters and stuff so that people can jump around without having to watch an entire stream again. So it's more useful for people, but of course it's not really easy to do because YouTube's UI is atrocious. I also have to watch them at twice the speed because otherwise it would take me forever. It's also the only reason I can stand listening to myself. If I manage to increase the the speed to which I'm talking to, then I can stand to hear my voice. Hi, Six Pounder. Thanks for getting Amberol. Oh, nice. Oh, good, good. Oh, no worries. I'm honestly, I'm not a good Rust developer. Well, I'm not a good Rust developer in a sense that this is my literal third Rust project ever. So I'm definitely not somebody that has to be held as a paragon to anything Rust related. I only know about how to use GTK. So I'm sure anybody else can be better than I am. But yeah, no, absolutely. One of the reasons why I've been streaming this entire process is because I want other people to pick up the GNOME platform and pick up Rust and um, pick up any other language and write applications for GNOME. It's important we finally have a platform that gets out of your way and lets you create good applications that are useful to people and they're not grandfathered in from the late 90s or early 2000s and they try to do everything. Now we can make applications that do one thing and they do it properly. Mirror's code is pretty clean. Oh god. Uh, I try to be as idiomatic as possible, not in terms of Rust at the very least. That usually is helped by Clippy or the cargo formatting tool or basically reading a bunch of tutorials. My main preoccupation is trying to write idiomatic GTK and GNOME code so that people can take inspiration and write proper applications. That is not really related to the language I'm using. I would probably write pretty much the same kind of application in, I don't know, Python or JavaScript. It would just be slightly different in terms of project layout, mostly, I think. But yeah, I mean, I try to be as not just as idiomatic as possible, but I try not to be clever. I strive not to be as clever as possible because I know myself. And if I'm as clever as I can possibly be, in 6 months' time, I will have no idea what the fuck I was doing, and I will have thrown away all my code. This is a lifetime of observation, mostly. I know myself. I know my limits. I've tried in the past writing as a code as clever as I could possibly do, and it all turned out a mistake. Don't try to be clever. At least, if you're like me, don't try to be clever. It's a bad idea. I know a lot of people that are super clever and they can write clever code because they're super clever. Me, I'm just dumb. I just write the code that makes stuff work and it's easy to read. That's it. Which is also why I don't go into optimization or like stuff like that. I prefer not it's I prefer code that is easy to read so that it's easy to understand, so it's easy to remove. It's rule number 1. Write code that is easy to remove. I was I think I was explaining this a while ago to my partner. It's basically my main goal in life is that all my code at some point will be removed and will only live in the history of a project and not in the actual project. That kind of removes a lot of the ego problem that plague free and open source software, to be honest with you. A lot of people in this community have a lot of ego. They allow their ego to get in the way. I try not to. I try to avoid doing that. Okay. Right. I have a couple of things that I want to do in Amberol today. Mainly, let me switch to my ID. So mainly, I've done a couple of changes there. So while Tobias was at the Linux Application Summit this weekend, he also took some time to review some of the changes that I made to Amberol. And one of them was the... Let me see. Of course, I had to switch branch. But yeah, basically, one of the main problems of the 0.5 release was that I had to remove the effect that showed the remove button for the playlist and the songs in the playlist, because it's not really discoverable, but also it's not really accessible and doesn't work with touch, which isn't great in many regards. It's one of the things that you have to think about when you're doing it, because it's easy to ignore the fact that touch input is a thing, and also it's easy to ignore the fact that people will explore your user interface not with a pointer device, but with an assistive technology device. I'm not going to say you have to design your application so that they can be used exclusively through a Braille interface, because that would be problematic on many ways. But you have to consider the fact that not everyone will use just a pointer device like a mouse or a touchpad and a keyboard. You have to consider the fact that some people will explore your user interface using a touch device, like a touch screen, or they will explore your user interface, they will interact with your user interface using the keyboard and a screen reader, for instance. It's something that has to be kept in mind. It's also one of the reasons why you shouldn't be designing your UIs to be full of of reactive elements. You should not pack everything like as tightly as you possibly can, and they cannot be as small as they possibly can. This is a bad idea. It looks great if you want to give the illusion of being busy, but it's not a great UI for people that have to like interact with it. And I know that a lot of nerds will start like screaming at me by saying, too much white space, it should be smaller, everything should be smaller, compact, no white space. It's like, just come back when you're, instead of being 20, you're like 45, and we'll talk again. But in general, yeah, the removal of the button, the remove, sorry, the removal of the remove button, which is terrible. Uh, instead of just removing it, I showed it like all the time in the UI, which occupies space for something that is not a primary like method of interaction or a primary goal of the interaction with the playlist. But I also don't think it looks good. It was a last minute decision that I don't regret making, but it was always temporary for obvious reasons. So instead, I decided to use the HIG. So whenever I'm in doubt about how to structure a UI or how to solve a problem in the UI, I tend to go back to the HIG, to the human interface guidelines for the GNOME project. Let me here. So whenever I'm in doubt, I don't remember the HIG by heart. That's also not the point of the HIG. The point of the HIG is to provide you with patterns that you can reuse and can follow. So if you're doing something, then it's better to do it like everyone else does it, so that people will be able to transfer the knowledge from one application to the other. They will not have to relearn the user interface for every single application. And in this case, what was I trying to achieve with the playlist? I was trying to basically let a person go through the playlist and remove one song or more than one song from the playlist itself. And that is a pattern. Other applications do precisely this. And the HIG provides exactly this pattern, the selection mode, which is absolutely what I was looking for. So whenever you're in doubt about how to structure the UI and how to deal with user interaction, I strongly recommend you just pop open the human interface guidelines and go through them and figure out if some pattern there applies, because it's very likely that it will. Especially if you're not like me and you're not if you're exactly like me, actually, if you're like me and you don't remember everything, but you put most of your memories off on the internet, then it's easy to not see this immediately. So might as well just pop open the HIG and look for that, which is precisely what I did. So the usual test music. So I added selection mode for the playlist. The selection mode is very easily applied, is a pattern that is applied on other applications. So let's go back to this. So a selection and an edit mode. And they're described like selection edit modes operates on the content of a collection view, either a content grid or a list or a sidebar list, and provide a way to modify multiple content items. Oh my gosh, this is precisely what we're looking for. And even in edit mode, there's a precise mention. Like, edit mode is appropriate when there are distinct editing tasks for an entire content collection. A good example is editing a playlist, where the primary interaction is playback and editing the playlist is a distinct activity. Wow, that was impressively spot on, because this is exactly what I'm doing. So we enter into the selection or edit mode with the button, and we select a song, and the action row at the bottom will say how many songs are selected. and get updated, and then we can decide to remove a song like this. And then we exit. And now we don't need to have a over effect on the rows of the playlist. We have a button that lets us enter and exit the list, and we are done. So this is I initially coded it like this. Then Tobias was again very kind, and he reviewed a little bit the interaction, but also he pointed out that the styling for the button here and other stuff and the icons that I use for the buttons were had to be changed to fit in with the current like design guidelines. But it worked really well, and I was able to merge it inside the main development branch, so it will be up in the next release of Amberol, which might be earlier than Friday, to be fair, because I want to land a couple of other changes there in response to a couple of issues that were filed since last Friday, when I did the 0.5 release. But yeah, that was one of the things that I did this weekend. Mostly, again, as a reaction to issues filed, but also I knew that some stuff would need to be changed. The remove button being always visible isn't great, and I knew that when I released Amberol 0.5, so it was expected, to be honest. But yeah, no, I was actually I was actually surprised how easy the not the implementation per se, but how easy it was to modify the UI so that it would go into selection mode. And it's also kind of it's kind of a good thing. Modifying the UI to add that was a good deal, easier than I expected, mostly because I was able to remove a ton of stuff from the main window UI definition file. And actually I want to also move the playlist box here into its own widget, because it's getting a little bit out of hand now. How big it is now. Yeah, it's definitely too big. It's more than 100 lines of XML. So yeah, it needs to go into its own UI definition file and its own composite widget. Also because, and this is something that I want to add to this, to do this today, for this particular stream, is I want to add error messages to the main UI. Mostly because up until now, all the error messages have been printed out on the terminal. Some of them are, of course, not entirely useful for the user, but some of them really need to be communicated to them. Like, for instance, if we fail to load the metadata for a specific file, right now we print out a warning on the terminal, which is fine for error on the terminal. But for instance, if we are unable to, I don't know, read a file, there is no indication that there has been a failure. So it's going to require some feedback to the user. So at the very least, they know that something happened, and they need to I don't know, either file a bug or do something like that. Thanks for the follow, Nifty Wifty. But yeah, the user feedback part is currently just non-existent unless you run Amberol from the terminal. In which case, yeah, you get a bunch of warnings. Not even the entire debugging. Like the entire debugging stuff is useless for basically anyone that it's not me, or is anybody that is not like debugging the code base. But the rest should be communicated to the user. Like the user is dropping a file on the like a directory on somewhere, and then on the main window, and there is no feedback if the directory could not be read or accessed. So yeah, and in order to do that, we will use the Adwaita toast overlay, and we already have a drag overlay here for the drag and drop operation, but which means that we'll have to nest a bunch of stuff, and it's going to be fun. Oh, thank you, Nifty. And yeah, if we start packing another, so the Adwaita toast overlay, I think it would go inside the drag overlay or outside. It's pretty much the same. We have too many overlay, but the overall idea, yeah, if we want to have it, yeah, it's gonna either go inside the drag overlay because it has to appear over the initial view stack, so we can present errors there as well. But also it could go inside the toast overlay. Anyway, the drag overlay could go inside the toast overlay. It's pretty much the same. But yeah, if we add another object in another widget here, it's going to move everything, and the longer the UI definition file is, the more complicated it is to edit it. So we are going to move a bunch of stuff around. So we are going to do two things. The first one is we are going to create new widget here. So I'm going to create a new file, and we'll call it playlist view here, and we're going to create a UI definition file here that we call playlist view. I'm working on Libre remote desktop software like TeamViewer. Oh, that's very cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I've never used Lua. I've seen a lot of people just use it for like specific things, like extending existing applications, like Totem, the GNOME video player has the ability to write plugins in Lua. But I've also seen people using Lua for writing games. So you write the main rendering code in C, C++, whatever, and then you hook the Lua interpreter into that so that you can write the game logic in a higher level language that is easily embeddable. But yeah, no, that's a very cool project. Okay, so no. Okay, so we need to add the playlist, the playlist view widget to the Meson build file. So this is needed because we are using Meson and Cargo at the same time to build the project, and there is a weird interaction here between Meson and Cargo. Basically, we are telling Meson to execute Cargo to build the project, and then we take what Cargo has built and install it alongside the rest of the files that the project contains, like icons and resource files and stuff like that. But Cargo basically knows what to build because you point it to the source directory and it will enumerate all the Rust files that it can find and just build them all. But Meson doesn't know when to run Cargo unless you specify the files that should be tracked by the build system. So we need to specify the files that we care about. Oh no, no worries. No, you didn't interrupt me. I'm fine with people interrupting me. If I'm deep in the zone, I will tell the chat that I will look at the chat later on. Yeah, I was about to say a bunch of people also use Python, but Python does have have some issues with the startup times, especially when running embedded, because it has to load all the Python modules. That has always been a problem with Python. I still remember back with Python 2, I did a quick comparison between Python was what 2.2, 2.3, and Perl 5 point whatever. At the time, I was mostly interested in Perl as a programming language, and somebody was had mentioned, oh no, Python is a lot better than Perl because it's so fast, and I was like, yeah, no, this is the time to start a Perl script and a Python script, and it takes like 10 times because it has to go through the entirety of the install modules for whatever reasons, and Perl doesn't do that. Okay, so playlist view here, the Meson build is fine. Then we have to go through the gResource file, and we will have to add a file here. Again, this is a very this is just scaffolding stuff. I'm basically telling it to add the playlist view to the resource file, and I should not be using an alias here, mostly because it's kind of pointless. Everything is under the GTK namespace anyway. But I'd have to modify all the source code to remove to add a GTK like bit here. Again, it's not a big deal. gResource, you can have a single gResource file, like gResource manifest, and then have different prefixes embedded inside the same manifest here. So I could remove everything here and put it under like this, and everything will go into the overlay, or could remove this and go into the GTK overlay here. But then I'd have to modify all the source code that references these file to add a GTK bit. The GTK part here is mostly required, well, it's generally required by specific files like the help overlay and the style, the additional style sheet for the application. Everything else doesn't need to live under the GTK subdirectory. I just added it because it was easier to deal with, but it's not a requirement that the UI files for the the composite widgets or the custom widgets that I have in this application have to live in the root of the prefix here. They could live in under GTK as well. I have another project that I'm currently working on that puts them inside the GTK name subdirectory inside the G resource file, so it's fine. But yeah, this one was what came with the template, and then I expanded on the GNOME Builder template, and then I forgot to just fix it. And now it's not too late, but now I'm just lazy, which is a fundamental quality for any programmer, being absolutely and totally lazy. Okay, so the G resource file is fine. Then we have, yeah, this. So what we need is, of course, the preamble here. We're gonna modify it. So this class is going to be called playlist view, and it's gonna be a dark descendant of GTK widget. And then it's going to contain all the widgetry that is inside the playlist view. So this. Yeah. This one is 27, so it has to go here. So I can cut it and replace it with class and it can stay there. We're gonna figure out after that. In this case, we're probably gonna have to call it like this, playlist, so we can reference it from the code later on. And then we are going to do this. We're going to need child here. And then we are going to pack all of this here. We might decide not to pack a GTK box because it's kind of pointless. We could pack the children directly in here, but also it's a single object anyway. Hi NFG colleagues. How long have you been with GNOME? I'm getting back into desktop Linux for 12 years and loving GNOME again. I've been involved with GNOME almost 20 years. Next year in June, it's going to be my 20th bugversary. It's going to be 20 years since I filed my first bug with a patch for GNOME, for a GNOME component. It was patch for the Python bindings for GTK2. So it's going to be 20 years as somebody that is involved with the actual project in terms of contribution, like the development of GNOME components. As a user, I was a user. I used GNOME 0.3, so we are talking about 1998, 1999. But I started being an actual GNOME user for GNOME 2.0. Well, 1.4, 2.0. It was around that time. So it's been 22, 23 years-ish. But yeah, I've been I've been involved with this project for a while now. It's yeah, you will find if you stick around in the GNOME community for a little while, you'll notice that there are a bunch of faces that recur. um, I think it's a good indication that the GNOME project is a good place to stick around and to contribute to, mostly because it's the people that made GNOME are still very much involved with it. I mean, they're still one of the co-creators of the GNOME project. Federico Mena. One of the original GTK developers are not with GNOME. They never were like working on GNOME. They mostly were working on the GNU image manipulation program. But a lot of people that started contributing to GTK before GTK was actually a thing, a separate thing, are still around to this day. It's kind of impressive if you think about it. Like 25 plus years and they're still there. And if a project still has a bunch of people from the original days and still is able to attract more contributors, then it means that it's doing something right. Which is also why I always find it hilarious when people say, oh, GNOME, the new GNOME contributors have destroyed the project and they lost their way and they're destroying the projects because they are new. And like, do you realize that the same people are working on the same project like for the past 20 years? It's not new contributors, it's always the same people. If something has changed, it's because the original people that made GNOME want to change it. It's just, yeah, it's not like there was a massive die-off of contributors between GNOME like 1 and 2 and between GNOME 2 and 3 or anything like that. It's the same people. Almost to the letter. Oh yeah, no, people like to complain. I mean, I complain a lot. I complain a lot. Even on stream, I complain a lot. I mean, I'm on Twitter, for Christ's sake, so of course I complain a lot. But I try to complain in a way that makes people either respond to me and tell me I'm full of shit because I'm wrong, or I complain because I know I'm right and I'm trying to do something about it. I don't complain just because I want to complain. Oh yeah, yell at dogs all day for being wrong. Yeah, I mean, I have to be careful because last time I said the docs are wrong, I ended up becoming the maintainer for the entire GNOME developer documentation infrastructure. So I have to be very careful about what I complain. I do enjoy I mean, try to I try to complain if I'm also willing to put up, like, put my money where my mouth is. If I have enough resources to spare, I will try and complain because I know I will work on it. Otherwise, I'll just I'll tend to shut the fuck up. Okay, so let's also review a little bit this stuff. Yeah, no, that's fine. Complain about the previous UI components infrastructure and end up rewriting it all. Yeah. Yeah, that is so common, it's not even funny. I mean, it is funny, but it shouldn't be. Yeah, I know that they make formatters for this stuff, and I can make GNOME Builder reformat the entire thing, but I'm also reading it. I take I whenever I reformat some stuff manually is because I'm rereading what I'm doing, what I've done, and see if it's necessary. So I'm actually reading the code while I'm formatting it. It's a whole habit from back when I was using Vi in a terminal. I'm basically doing code review for myself line by line while I'm reformatting. This is GNOME Builder, by the way. So Christian plan to add some XML completion. I think so. The main problem is the main problem with the UI definition file is that the format is not really defined. So I mean, yeah, it's defined. There's a schema and all that. It's pretty easy to deal with this. The main problem is that all the classes for the attributes are dependent on the libraries you're using, and so are the properties and their values. And also you have custom parsing inside the UI definition file itself. So for instance, the style element here is defined in code by GTK widget. It's not part of the basic grammar of the UI definition file format. If you're creating a widget, then the widget will have a style element here, or a child element, for instance. You don't see it here because there's nothing there, but there's also the accessibility stuff. So there are also the accessibility properties and relations, and there is the layout elements for layout properties, for layout manager properties. And while it's possible to just run a validation pass on most of this stuff, it's harder to do a proper validation pass. So you can validate the structure if you missed out some stuff, but otherwise it's not really defined by a schema. It cannot be defined by a schema, or at the very least a comprehensive schema. Like for instance, you can navigate it here and you can see what it is and all the bits and pieces, and you can find stuff inside the document. It will treat it as an XML document, which is perfectly fine, and will tell you this is actually a class and has the back button, so you can see all of this, but you cannot validate the contents of this because it just cannot be validated. It's defined at runtime. Never remember if I can do, if there is a reformat. There should be a reformatting stuff. Oh. No, it won't do anything here. I'm pretty sure that yeah, again, if there are GNOME Builder developers in chat, they will scream at me for doing this manually. But I'm also, again, as I was saying, I'm also reviewing the code here because I'm pretty sure I've this part of the UI definition is one of the oldest parts of the application, and it has survived at the very least 4 different UI changes. So I'm pretty sure a bunch of stuff here is unnecessary. Like, I don't need to have the what is the, no, this one I need it because it's the Q selected label. But I don't need the remove button, for instance, because the remove button is tied to an action. Well, no, the clear button here is tied to an action, and I don't need to have an ID. Yeah, there are a bunch of stuff here that I should fix, and I'll have to go through them. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have an ID, but usually I reserve the IDs to the widgets that I know I will access in code, so I don't get confused later on. 90% of my programming practices are how to avoid Emanuele getting confused. And forget about stuff. Here, like for instance, the bunch of styles here that could be avoided as well. Yeah. I also forget stuff. Sorry, my life. Yeah. I mean, the amount of stuff I completely forget. It's the reason why I try to record everything I do into like notebooks and notes that I leave myself, so I don't have to remember them because I'm terrible at doing that. Okay, so I have 2 options here. One, I pack everything inside the GTK box, or B, I put a GTK box layout and then I pack everything inside the widget directly. It's the same really, except that I have to set the orientation and the spacing, so it's easier to have a box and just use a bin layout for this. So we have a UI definition now. Oh yeah, the notification sound is on my end. It's because somebody's my web browser is getting a notification from something, and it's incredibly annoying. I set it to not disturb me, and do not disturb also should remove the sound, except that Firefox, in its infinite wisdom, decided that the do not disturb is completely like optional. Also, I disabled the sound literally for notification for Firefox, and still Firefox just pings away, and it has no setting to disable that. I will find it, and I will remove it. Okay, so this is a simple composite widget. We have a few of them inside Amberol already, which means that I can literally just copy and paste a bunch of stuff because it's a lot easier to deal with. So we don't need this stuff. And we can rename this to playlist view. And then we can remove most of the template widget here because we don't care about them right now. And we have to rename the objects. So. Okay, playlist view. Okay. It's GTK widget. It's a bin layout, and we can playlist view. The Mason build file, the comments, which ones? The SPDX annotations for your use. Those should not break anything, but of course, should and should not are advisory only in real life. Okay, so. And then we can rename this. It's a widget. That's fine. Okay, we can remove the accessors to these widgets here. Okay. Yeah, I probably have a fix. I honestly haven't noticed that, but I had to switch to the nightly build because of other changes in. Well, I had to switch because I was using I was writing the documentation for the GNOME developer website, and in order to do that, I needed the latest version of GTK and libadwaita inside the GNOME Builder SDK, so I could, you know, write libadwaita applications for the tutorial. And the end results I had to update to nightly, and I've been on nightly. To be honest, it's been crashy at points, so I'm happy I'm on nightly, but I'm also aware that sometimes it will get in a tizzy and I will get a crash when I do not expect it. Okay, so we have this and it should work. Playlist view is fine. I need to add the module here. And then I will need to go to the window here and use playlist view. And then I will add it here. It's not playlist box here, it's going to be playlist view. And it's going to be playlist. Okay, what will I need? I will need the Q action bar, the remove button, and the select label. So I will need these here to be inside the playlist view. And then I will need these to have public accessors here. Let's do this very... What are you doing? And then we're gonna return self and Q action bar. Same here, and same here. So I can replace direct access with a simple call from the container. So then you remove button, yep, and so then you refactor label. And this one should be okay. So we go here, and now we have to do oh, we also have a bunch of other stuff here. The Q revealer is outside, and the length label is inside, and so is the Q view. So I'll have to also move it here, move it away inside the playlist view. Oh, have a good day, and yeah, see you around. Okay, so here. And there we go. Okay, so we have this, and now the window is gonna be interesting there. So, where? Not playback control. I don't care about this. Here. So playlist view. They all start with Q. So let's go inside window, and then we go for here. So Q revealer, go, no, it's there, it's still the flap. The Q view is gone. This one is also gone. The action bar is gone. This one is gone, and this one is gone. And this one gets renamed to playlist view. Okay. Now let's go here. Q revealer is still there. It's fine. This is Q action bar, so it's gonna be playlist view Q action bar as a method. Queue revealer, remove button. This is gonna be playlist view, queue remove button. Okay. This is gonna be playlist view, view. Same here. And here. And this one is going to be okay. And this one too. Instead of having this like accessors to the widgets inside the playlist view, I could have methods on the playlist view itself that would hide the structure in case I decide to change it. But yeah, I don't really want to deal with this right now. So let's try and see if something broke. Yeah, here. What happened here? Yeah. I don't do this. And here as well. Okay. Here it is. This is gonna be playlist view. Link label. Playlist. And here as well. Okay, that seems to be the only thing that was broken. Okay, the build has succeeded. Let's try and see what happens. If, yay, stuff is broken. The back button. Oh yeah, the back button is there as well. Okay. Because it's not called Q, of course. So it's going to be back button here. This one goes away as well. And then we add it to the playlist view. And we add an accessory. Okay, so we go here and we find the back button. Goes away. Off. This is gonna be playlist view. Yeah, at this point, this one will probably be replaced by an actual accessor instead of gaining direct access to the widget to try and keep the line length to a reasonable amount. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, seems to be working. That looks good. I need to check this because there is yeah, there's still a song selected there, and I think it's because it's not getting updated correctly, but for the time being seems to be working. So we're gonna add it. Okay, let's lint it. Perfect. And then we are going to do a check. Yep. Coding style. So window, line 309. It's here. It's gonna be here. Self imp, playlist view, view action bar, set revealed. This is, where are you? 620-ish. Okay. It's queue remove button. It's here. It's gonna be playlist view, queue remove button, connect clicked, and then $700 and change. Set factory here. And so on and so forth. There. And connect and activate instead goes here. The rule seems a little bit arbitrary, to be honest. So let's save it and rerun this so I get the numbers, the line numbers, the updated line numbers. 799. Here. Self imp. Set label. And this one is 886 here. Self imp. Playlist view. So let's see. Oh yeah, need a new file, new translatable file. Yeah, the translatable file check is a lifesaver, to be honest with you, because I always forget about that. And when that happens, on a GNOME project, I usually get a commit from one of the translation team, adding the file to the list of translatable files. But since this is not a GNOME, it's not a project under the GNOME group. It's in the world group on GNOME's GitLab. It means that it doesn't get automatically like watched over by the localization teams. So I need to get all the help I can get from automated tools. Okay. Admit. Move the playlist. widgets into their own composite. Keep to in the UI definition file simpler to easier. How do you deal with master removal, master child removal in GTK? So, it depends on the widget. Some widgets have API to let you do that. If you're writing a custom widget, is a simple matter of writing your own method, like removal, that goes through all the children using the GTK widget API. So get the first child, get the next sibling, remove the child that you have, and apply that. It's a very simple, like, let me see, something like very simple like this. Well, child equals widget first child while child next equals child next sibling widget, well, child and parent child equals next, and that's it. Basically, you do something like that. Yeah, kind of. It works that way. Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to iterate that, or yeah, always get the first child, and then remove it. But yeah, it works like that. That is, technically speaking, something that only custom widget implementation should do. You should not be calling this API on existing widgets that you don't control. For widgets that are provided by GTK itself, usually you either want the API to be available on the widget itself, or you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to pack your stuff, and then if you want to remove everything, then remove the widget itself. Like if you have a GTK box and you pack all your children inside it and you want to remove all the children, then remove the box directly and add a new box. It will do the exact same thing. This is mostly because we haven't yet decided the shape of the API in some cases. For instance, you can use a GTK box for you use GTK box for scaffolding. You don't use GTK box for like dynamic content. If you want to have dynamic content, use a GTK list box, for instance. If you have fewer widgets, or if you have a lot of widgets, you use GTK list view. At that point, you have models to deal with, and it's fine. A GTK box is mainly scaffolding. It means that you're creating the structure of your UI, and if the UI changes, you should probably use a GTK stack with multiple views. If you are dynamically removing a bunch of stuff from a box, then it's easier to literally remove the box. Also because, as I was saying, we haven't decided yet the shape of the API for some stuff. Like GTK box, is it a list or an array? If it's an array, we should be able to access the each item using an offset. If it's a list, it's by iteration only, because it's easier that way. And the way you deal with that also shapes the API for removing widgets out of and clearing the widget, the box itself. The same thing happens for grid. The same thing happens for any other complex layout manager in GTK. So yeah, that is also why I generally recommend to create your own custom widget and then either pack a GTK box into it, or use a box layout manager, and then you control the way the children are added or removed. It's easier that way, because then you can implement whatever you want. The shape, you decide the shape of the API. Okay, so we added that. Let's see how our window UI definition file looks. 131 lines and a bunch of white space there. So that's fine. But yeah, now it's good because we can pack our stuff inside it without having to deal with a lot of like a messy structure. So how do we pack the toast overlay? Let me go here, and then we can go inside Libad White documentation. It's the toast overlay. Cough, cough. So the toast overlay is here. It's a simple widget, but yeah, we'll have to pack it. We pack inside the drag overlay or outside of the drag overlay. The drag overlay probably has precedence. Yeah, let's pack it inside it. So we're going to separate this, and we're going to add an object class add white toast overlay. And then we give it a property. So we are going to go here. This is offset 15. Which is here. So, okay. So this one is going to be here. And it's going to be another property here. So, object 15, property 17. Yep. Then we'll have to re-indent that, but it's fine. So nothing should have changed inside the UI. So running it should not change anything. Correct. Let me see if I can it should still work. Yep, drag and drop still works. Perfect. Okay. Now we will need to have the toast overlay inside the window object. So we can have it here. And then we have to fill it here. Okay. we need to override the new constructor here. So normally you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that because you can implement the default trait for the widget internal structure, the private implementation. Here, use default here, and it will do the instance will be initialized to the correct values whenever it's created. Unless you have to do stuff like non-default values for your fields. For instance, here we have all the default here. Playlist shuffle is initialized to a false. This is another default, so I could use cell default. But this one, playlist visible, is initialized to true, for instance, which means we need to change the way it's set, the default. And then we have the player, the waveform, the provider here, and the receiver here. They are initialized to something very different from the default. They have arguments, for instance, here. And the end result is that if you don't provide the default trait here, you have to override the new constructor. And if you override the new constructor, then you have to provide all of that. But it's entirely possible to do this. It's an option. For composite widgets that have no internal state that is not a default value, then you don't need to do any of this. But in this case, it's necessary. Okay, so now we have the toast widget, the toast overlay, which means that we can add toasts to the UI. Let's see, debugging here. Yeah, for instance, let's translate this warning here to an actual toast. So we get a warning there. Let's see. So we can call it, what are you doing? Add toast. Let's call it add toast, and then we use format. And then we do this. We remove the here, and then we add a function. And then message. And then we do post post. I need to go and look at the documentation for libadwaita. Okay. Where is the libadwaita RS? And there you go. And pause. So, new title string. Perfect. So we are gonna do new message, and then do self in toast overlay add toast. And that one should do the trick. Oh yeah. This one expects this, so we'll have to pass an actual string. Then we'll do this. Okay. So I actually have no idea what to do here, because we do, I mean, I can do this. Oh, nice. Oh, this is an interesting thing. I never actually tried it. It should not reach at this point. It should not reach this point. It should never reach this point. Okay. Oh no, I'm dumb. Oh yeah, of course. Of course it does that way. Because I only do that check when I go into the folder code, but I never do that for single files. Yeah, of course it does it. So I cannot do this. I have to go here inside the utilities. I mean, whenever I'm iterating over something, I actually query the content type and see if it's an audio file. But otherwise, I should not be doing that. Okay. So I will have to fix that. But first, yeah, I need to verify that I'm actually doing the right thing elsewhere. Hi, Minkyu. What's the rationale between the imp attribute and then redeclaring all the time, even if it's already in self? Oh, this is different. So any GObject class in Rust is composed of two parts: the external part and the internal part. The external part is a Rust wrapper that exists as a Rust object. The internal part is another Rust object there that implements all the traits that are required by GObject. So you have two parts here. So you have the internal part that is the private data, let's call it that way, that contains all the stuff like template children, all the internal state of the object, and stuff like that. And this internal part implements the traits necessary for saying this is actually a GObject. So it implements the object subclass trait, where you basically have the class in it and the instance in it. It implements the object implementation for GObject, which gets the GObject virtual functions like constructed, the properties, the get property and set property, and then the widget implementation, so the virtual functions for widget, window, application window, and add white application window. So everything that is inherited by this particular type. And then you have the external part. The external part is a Rust object that provides the API for other people to call. So in this case, the internal setup channel, the public, where is it? Add folder to queue, so that people can call this method on self from the outside. The imp here is the equivalent of accessing the private data of a GObject instance. So we have the outer instance, we access the internal part, so we can access the field that is declared on the internal part. They have to be separate. Because of how GTK Rust is implemented, well, not GTK Rust, but the GObject implementation of inside the Rust bindings are implemented. So it's necessary if you want to do that. Otherwise, it will not be possible for Rust to provide a GObject for other people, for other parts to use. It's a GObject constraint, yes. You have two parts. You have a split, like a split object. You have the public, available to everyone, like API, and then you have the internal state that has interior immutability and has the ability to override the virtual functions, install properties and install signals, and so on and so forth. And then you have a bunch of traits outside that gets preloaded when you include the prelude and the subclass prelude, like modules from GTK RS that basically just bridge over the two. So yeah, it's basically necessary if you want to implement an actual GObject. If you have a non-GObject Rust object, like in this case I have the player object here that does not have any GObject bits, it's a simple Rust structure and it behaves exactly like any Rust structure. Whenever you define a GObject subclass, the macro here, the glib wrapper macro, will also provide you with a method called imp that gives you access to that, to the internal implementation of the object. So that's basically it. Okay, so what do we fix first? Fix first the toast. So I need to add something else that shows a toast for a warning or anything like that. Where are you? So like, yeah, let's add this. Add file to queue. Now let's fix that so we can show a toast if that didn't work. So add file to queue. Here. Okay, before doing that, we need to verify that this file is actually an audio file. So the way we do that is we query the file info. And we do that the same way we do in the utilities function here. We know for sure that it's going to be a regular file. It's not going to be a directory, and we only need to do this. So let's simply get a, so the info equals file query info. It's going to be standard, and it's going to be GIO file query info flags, no follow symlinks. Let's do it. Okay, if this is not an audio type, an audio file type, then we do self add toast format file. It's not. Ah, this is a terrible error message. Okay. And then we do file, base name, and wrap. And we return, so we don't have to deal with that. The other thing is that we probably also want to, so add file to queue. Yeah, we also want to check if the file is a regular file, because this stuff is called from a couple of places. Mm-hmm. We're gonna fix the error messages here. Ah, of course. Oh yeah, I'm missing cancelable. Cancelable. It's gonna be jail. Cancelable none. And it's not some, but it if that okay. Of course. Oh yeah, I'm an idiot. And of course it's a path buff, so I have to turn it into a lossy. I shouldn't be using base name, I should use display name. Base name is for file paths. Display name will try to turn it into UTF-8 string that can be used for displaying. What are you doing? What the fudge are you doing? So oh, it's on file info, not file. Yeah. And there is no option there. Okay. So let's go again here, and if I move the to-do file here, file to-do MD is not a song. Perfect. And it actually works. So this one is fine. I'll also have to mark the string as translatable, of course. So let's do this. let msg equals I18, and then it's going to be, I never remember the syntax there. So I have it elsewhere. Here. Where are you? Okay. I could use the I18N format. So yeah, I get the formatted stuff. But they're not static strings anyway. So, oh my god, sometimes the pop-ups are terrible. Let's go here. And this one should also be info display name. Okay. Yeah, we can keep something similar to that. Okay. So we will need this. It's not supported audio file. And then we are going to do this, and I'll probably need the typography app so I can use the proper quotation marks here. And here. Assuming that the right. Okay, this one should be fine like this. Of course not. Oh yeah, because I did something incredibly stupid like this. And this one should probably be a string literal. So I'll have to do this. No, I cannot do this. I can do this though. No. I am doing something like that in another place in the code base. Okay, I'm doing like this, but no. It's because I'm not okay. I'm not concatenating stuff like that. I need to check in other. Let me double check there. This one. So I'm fairly sure that other Rust applications are using something similar. So yeah, maybe if I don't do something stupid like that. Okay. Yeah, they're using the format there. Okay. So we can do let msg equals I18 mf. Okay. And then we pass the message directly. Okay. No, that's fine. Why is it not recognized? Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, expected string, I need to borrow it. And this one is expected string. Okay. So yeah, that's fine. So this one, I need to borrow it. And that's it as it is. And we are going to do the same here. Message. Okay. And this one is going to be borrowed as well. Off. Yeah, of course. Go away. Okay. I'll get another warning somewhere. No, that's fine. Okay, let's try and see if that happens again. Let's drag a text file. That's good. Okay. That worked. So that's fine. We'll have to modify the mirror message here as well. So We already have that error message. Should copy it so we don't. So the translation machinery picks up the exact same thing, so it doesn't have to translate it twice. Here. Where are you? There you go. Yeah, this one should work as well. So yeah, the entire translation machinery in GTK, GNOME, free software, like very specific subset of free software, is based on message catalogs. You mark strings for translation, and then whenever there is a tool that extracts all the strings for translation and puts them inside a catalog, and then every time you use a function like this one is a wrapper for dealing with Rust, but in general it's just calling a C function that gets as an argument the original string, which gets compared inside the translation catalog, and which is just basically a massive hash table, and it will return the associated translation for that particular string. So if you have the same string multiple times, you get it inside your code base, it gets translated only once. Okay, so let's see if I get any checks. Yes. So this one is line 400. Where are you? There you go. It's going to be file query info. There you go. And this one too. Okay, so, yep. Right, so at this point, in theory, we should have a way to give feedback to the user that something bad has happened. Like whenever we're trying to add a file to the queue and the file is not a valid audio file or is not a regular file, then we just skip it. The adding a folder to the queue already eliminates a bunch of stuff that we don't care about, so we don't have to deal with that. Okay, so add we need to give feedback to user whenever something went wrong in this specific case. We use first to communicate loading a file did not succeed. you go. So adding error message, like the typical way of adding error messages in GTK applications from time immemorial has been to present the user with error dialog. That is usually a bad idea from a usability perspective, because it stops your application dead in its tracks. Especially if you start using a modal dialog to ask the user to acknowledge the fact that the operation failed or has had any failures inside it. In GTK2, we try to provide an alternative way of doing this using info bars, which are like small bars that can appear and disappear from usually the top of the window. They behave like a dialog up to a point. The API is kind of similar to a dialog. They require acknowledgement from the user, and typically that is good if you have like you're loading a text file and the encoding is wrong. You have two options. One, load it anyway, even if it looks like weird. The other one is try to convert on load. That you don't want to block the entirety of the UI just because you have to present this issue, especially if your text editor has tabs, for instance, because you still want to be able to interact with the application. So the info bar try to solve that problem, but info bars are only useful if there are multiple actions. If it's just an acknowledgement that you dropped a file and the file is incorrect, or you are trying to load a bunch of files and they are not a valid format, then you don't want to have an info bar there, because it's a lot of Chrome for the user to adjust, especially in this case with Amberol, which is a single window, single UI state. Doesn't make sense to have an info bar, just like it doesn't make sense to have a dialog for that. So with the introduction of libadwaita, one of the new ways of doing this is using a toast, which is a small overlaid control that just says something happened, just dismiss it, or it will go away by itself. If you didn't press any, if you didn't give it any attention, it's not a fallible kind of thing, so it will stay there until it goes away by itself. I could change the priority so it never goes away until the user acknowledges the toast. In this case, it's, I mean, you load a bunch of files, you are still interacting with the window, so you won't go away for a while and then return, and the notification will be gone. The main thing is that the in-app notification, which is another way of describing toasts, can also be used to undo an action. Like, for instance, you launch an asynchronous operation and that asynchronous operation terminates. So it pops up the dialog. If in case that operation was undoable, you can put a little undo button there and you can press it and it will undo the operation. Or it can have any action, really. Like, I saved the file, pops up an in-app notification that says, do you want to open, like, press this button to open this the file that you just saved in another application, or launch another application. This is relatively useful for that case. In this case, we're just presenting the user the fact that they perform an action, the action failed, and it's not a fatal failure. The failure can be recovered. Like, you can select other files, for instance, to load inside the music player. So that's what a toast is mostly useful for in this case. Okay, so we have that. We don't have many other failure modes for this application, really. It only fails if something really happened on load. To 8 to 10. Oh, is the followers count? Oh yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, I'm just noticing the queue. Cassidy it has followed me. Hi, Cassidy, if you're still here. And Vimserf, thanks for the follow. Okay. I'm still bothered by this, honestly. I'm saving the state, the size of the window whenever we close it, close the application, but we cannot restore it because it's broken with GTK4 on X11, and it's so annoying. But I cannot do anything about it unless I fix GTK. But it requires dealing with X, and it's not great. I don't like dealing with X anymore. There's a reason why I try to switch to Wayland every like other week, even though I'm using NVIDIA. It's because I don't want to deal with X anymore. I've dealt with X for nearly 20 years. I don't like it there. I don't like it there anymore. Yeah, there are another couple of failure conditions, but they are mostly internal, and I don't want to present a toast for that. Let me see. I add a song, I add a directory here, and there is the case where the waveform doesn't get collected because there's some failure inside the file. And if that happens, I don't want to pop up a toast that says, oh, I failed to generate the waveform. You know that I failed to generate the waveform because you won't see the waveform. It will still be usable because even if it doesn't have a waveform, it will have a line here that you can use to seek the position inside the song. But still, it's not going to be useful to tell the user, yeah, I failed to generate I failed to set up the pipeline in GStreamer to generate the waveform. Yeah, well, whatever. What did I? Oh yeah, I need to fix this. I select a song, I remove it, and the song is still selected. There. And if I go back here, yeah, I need to update the length. So it should be here. Yeah, update selected count here. I only do it like here, and I need to do it whenever I also remove a song. And yeah. So whenever I press the remove button, here, I remove a song. I should probably call it here. No, it's fine. Yeah, that should be fine. There are some stuff that I should do in bulk, but so one unknown title, remove, perfect. So if I also do this, oh nice. Ha ha ha. Yep, state change error. I thought I fixed this. Hi, Vincher. Started using GNOME when it was version 1.4 is in 2001. Yeah. Yeah, so I originally tried... So when I first installed Linux, I tried out KDE 0.9 alpha. It was alpha or beta or something, and GNOME 0.3, which was at the time, they were at the time like the two desktop environments, and people were like, oh, they're too big and too stuffy, and I don't care, I just need a window manager. And I switched to a window manager. It was Window Maker. So I used Window Maker for at the very least another year or so. This was 1997. So 1997, 1998 was mostly running X with Window Maker, and then still using the terminal, the console, without running X. I used mostly the terminal console applications. So I read my email with Mutt, and I read Usenet with SLRN, and then I pulled my newsfeed using in. I try also to use what's it called? It was the newsreader that was TIN, maybe? I don't remember. TRN, probably. But I went back to SLRN because I like the scriptability of the component of the thing. And then I switched to, I tried again GNOME 1.2, 1.4, and I kind of liked it. And then when GNOME 2 was released, I started using it pretty much exclusively. Okay, so stopping existing pipeline, state change error. Okay, so is there another warning from? Okay, no, there is no warning from there. So, okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Come on. Are the old news servers still active? Some of them still, yeah. I was mostly active in the Italian like hierarchy, so IT.star. But I think Usenet kind of died when well, when the major ISPs decided not to carry the news feeds anymore, so you had to connect to specific news servers there, and then it was kind of a slow death, mostly because a lot of people were using Usenet for sharing files. So the hierarchy, alt binary hierarchy was used to share files, and the end result was that the major ISPs were not very fond of moving tons and tons of data on servers that basically very few people, real people, actually used. It was mostly like bots and stuff. So let's try and remove this. Okay, it removed it. Did I get a warning? Yes. No. Okay. Oh, what the hell happened there? That is so weird. Okay. But yeah, let's remove the expect there, so we don't accidentally crash because of a GStreamer error. This is entirely recoverable. We are just removing the existing pipeline, if one exists. I could even just take it. Actually, no, I should not be using a reference here. I should take it. Yeah, this one should be take. Because the pipeline goes away then after that. Hi, Daniel. I like GNOME on my Fedora. I do too. I'm currently running Fedora Silverblue, so 36, which isn't out technically yet. Hopefully next week. Or this week, I don't remember. But yeah, the Fedora, the GNOME on Fedora is actually really, really nice. Though there are multiple spins of Fedora. I do prefer my Silverblue with GNOME on it. It's supposed to be immutable. Yeah, it's supposed to be. Well, it is immutable. The operating system structure is immutable, and then what you do is you install Flatpaks, or you create containerized versions of your of an environment, like another Fedora installation. So right now I'm running Silverblue, which is immutable, but the IDE that I'm using, GNOME Builder, is in Flatpak, and the Flatpak build is running a shell here that contains a toolbox, which is another container. So a container is holding inside it another container. If you install on the base operating system, yes, you have to reboot, but otherwise you don't need to do that. If you install a Flatpak, it doesn't require that. If you just need a tool for some stuff, then you can just create a container using Toolbox, and then you have a perfectly mutable Fedora installation, for instance. You can install it and it will work that way. So honestly, I don't install anything inside my OS installation. It's there, and that makes upgrading to the next version really super simple. It's very unlikely to break. Let's do this. Yeah. No. I have to avoid the DMCA strike. Okay. Okay, so it seems to be working. Yeah. Taking the pipeline out of the cell, of the ref cell, is a lot better. Because then I don't have to care about the borrowing part and the reference part. I don't have to borrow reference. I'm literally removing it from the container. I'm going to replace it anyway, so who cares? But yeah, no, that's a good change. Would you recommend Civil Blue 2? So, well, of course, I recommend it to I would recommend it to application developers and to users in general. Users, because they are absolutely certain that their base operating system will not break. It's extremely hard to break a Silverblue installation. Even if an update, if you enable updates that are the unstable channel for the updates, even if that update breaks, it will let you boot to the previous version, and you can even roll back to a previous version again. So if you do an update and you don't like it, just roll back, and it's super easy and it's very convenient. The updates are also it will download the binary difference between the current state and the next state, so it will download a lot less data over the wire than a Fedora installation. And again, it will not break. If you're an application developer, it's even better, because I know programmers will break their machines basically every other day. So because that's what I used to do. And for system developers, is a little bit different. System developers like what I used to do, which basically means working on the desktop shell, for instance, or the system services, or the base toolkit of the operating system, then it gets a little bit more complicated, because you don't have access to the base system anymore. You have to do a couple of tricks here and there, but it's still very convenient compared to basically breaking your base system. So this is also usually what happens when you're hacking on the compositor or the window manager. You either use another machine, or you use a VM, or you basically just cobble together some solution that lets you still use your computer and develop on that computer. That's complicated. For users though, it's essentially unparalleled in terms of convenience. It will be incredibly hard to break, and it's incredibly easy to recover even if that happens. So I honestly, if you like GNOME and if you already like Fedora, switching to Silverblue is basically just the obvious choice. If you use another operating system like Ubuntu, or I don't know, any other Debian version, then it's going to be a little bit more complicated because of the change in the underlying operating system. But to me, at the very least, is worth it because of the peace of mind of dealing with all this stuff. Not having to care about if the next upgrade is going to break your system or not is incredibly liberating. I honestly don't have to worry about running an update anymore. Not even just an update, like daily updates, but also an update from Fedora 35 to Fedora 36 to Fedora 37 and so on and so forth. Plus I get like GNOME, the next version of GNOME, basically immediately. So And again, if something breaks because the next version of GNOME is unstable at the very beginning of the cycle, then I can roll back and not lose any data or anything else. To be honest, every single Linux distribution should move to that model, because there is just no reason whatsoever to have it completely mutable. Does it work well with NVIDIA? I'm running NVIDIA right now. So this machine is running the NVIDIA drivers, the binary blob ones. I also, when I upgraded to Fedora 30, what was that? No, when I reinstalled this machine with Fedora 35 and the Fedora Silverblue 35, I didn't enable the NVIDIA binary blob immediately, even though it's possible to do that. I didn't enable it, and I didn't notice that I was using the Nouveau drivers for about 3 weeks. After that, I had to I realized that I was using the Nouveau drivers mostly because I was trying to run a game on Steam and I couldn't get it to run. It was a newish game, so I couldn't get it to run properly. And then I looked at the list of drivers that I was running, and I was running Nouveau, and I didn't realize up until then. The machine was running perfectly fine. I was streaming even, so that was fine. I think CUDA should still work. Yeah, to install Broadcom. The Broadcom drivers are a pain in the ass. I used a MacBook Air for years. You don't have to tell. You don't have to sell me on that. The Broadcom drivers are terrible. I had to on Fedora. I literally had to download the drivers, the source code, and then recompile them into a custom RPM and then install it. It was such a pain. It was easier to buy a small Wi-Fi dongle for my laptop than to deal with all that shit. So annoying. Okay. Okay, so update the selection and look. And this one, simplify lifetime of state pipelines. We don't have to borrow a reference. When we are going to replace hash pipeline for different Broadcom card SKU and worked off by some miracle. Yeah, Broadcom drivers are terrible. I mean, it's just a massive clusterfuck. They are only surpassed by Realtek drivers right now, and mostly because Broadcom has stopped making Wi-Fi cards, so they stopped imposing misery on people. Ah. So let's open a merge request for this stuff. Okay. There you go. Okay, we have a few commits there that are not interesting for us. Yep. And here we go. Is the check script calling linter? Yes. I have a small check that I copied from Fractal. Let me open it up for you. So it does a couple of things there. One is it runs cargo format for me. So it does the linting and coding style like checks. And then it also runs a small utility that checks for typos, for common typos. And then it checks for if I forgot to add a file with translatable strings to the pod files. And what else? Oh yeah, it also checks that the gResource manifest is in alphabetical order. So it's easy to diff. Are you currently using NVIDIA on Wayland? No, not right now. Sadly not. Last I checked, the Wayland support is still a bit iffy on the NVIDIA driver side. Still a little bit crash happy. Performance is not great. The driver had to be fixed to submit a region of the display for update instead of submitting the entire display, saturating the bandwidth. And the other thing that doesn't work is the nightlight support. I use my computer way late into the evening and into the night, and I really need the nightlight feature. That one works only on the X driver, unfortunately. Would you say GTK is close to a front-end UI framework? It is a front-end UI framework. It has gotten better in resembling more common UI toolkits for the web, for instance, or other UI frameworks on other platforms. We copied liberally from tons and tons of examples. We made the API a lot simpler to use in terms of things that can possibly go wrong with GTK4. But yeah, it's very much a UI framework for desktop applications, but also for mobile applications these days. Sorry, not for mobile applications, for mobile aware application. Like Amberol is not just a desktop application. It works fine on desktop. Actually, it's where I develop it. It was where I use it all the time, but it can be scaled down to a mobile form factor without losing functionality. So on a desktop, it's perfectly fine to have something like this because it's very wide and it can be operated using a pointer and a keyboard. But when you resize and you give it a smaller dimension, for instance, you have a mobile with a constrained display size, so you have a constrained form factor, then the application copes with that by changing the way the information is structured. So you get access to the main part of the UI here, but also to the playlist, and it works with touch and it works with not just with keyboard. So you can switch here, and it works perfectly fine for that. And then if you have a desktop, it works like. So yeah, it does responsive layouts in that regard fairly well these days. This is part GTK and part libadwaita, which is part of GNOME. So it works for writing GNOME applications more than pure GTK applications, but nothing prevents you from running libadwaita on Windows or macOS as well. Though I don't, as a personal preference, I'm not entirely enthused about that. I like people targeting GNOME and not having to care about other platforms, but it's entirely possible to do that. Yeah, it's the PinePhone is a prime target for this work, for the work in libadwaita and for the work in libandi and stuff like that. I think these days GTK4 also does proper hardware acceleration on the PinePhone, or at the very least the PinePhone does proper hardware acceleration that GTK4 can use. So for instance, in this case, this entire application is rendered using OpenGL. The text is rendered on the CPU and then composited using GL. The waveform is all GL. The icons are textures, they're uploaded to GL. The text, we are trying to move it to GPU as well. So at some point it will not be drawn on the CPU at all. It all just runs on the GPU. So we are close. Because nothing said free software better than SoC from 2016. Dude, I was targeting with Clutter the PowerVR SoCs that are absolutely terrible. That have always been absolutely terrible. I honestly, when PowerVR, when Imagination Technology almost went bankrupt or basically just reduced to be an IP factory, and not do anything else, I was so fucking happy. You have no idea. I was waiting for them to go completely out of business. I would have gone then to their headquarters and then I would have pissed on the lawn. I swear to God. I hate that company. You have no idea. PowerVR has always been like a stupid venture. I have no idea how they survived this long. Basically, it was a bit of a racket. They basically had there was an agreement between all the people that own stock in Imagination Technology, the Imagination Technologies, not to acquire the rest of the company. So Apple couldn't acquire the entire of Imagination, Intel couldn't acquire the entirety of Imagination, Qualcomm, and so on and so forth. So it was an IP factory, but the brazenness in which they did business was terrifying to behold, and their Linux support was absolute shit. It was so terrible. I know you can style GTK apps with CSS. Yes, you can. I can show you that as well. This is the custom style sheet that I'm using for this application. The UI recoloring is done using gradients as well. It's all CSS. it's not like web CSS, so it's a subset of CSS, and very specific one at that. But whenever we are in doubt on how the styling machinery should work, we always try to conform to the W3C specifications for CSS. But yeah, it's been like that for a while now. When was GTK 3.0 that came out with CSS styling machinery? GTK 4 made it better, like completely better. No, I don't think so. You can. So as I was saying, the CSS like subset that it's in use is very specific. There are a bunch of changes there that there are a bunch of missing functionality from pure CSS. But for instance, I know that the style sheets for libadwaita are generating using Sass, for instance. So if you can use Sass to generate the CSS, then it's valid enough for Sass to cope with it. But there are changes, like for instance, we don't have CSS variables currently, so we only have the ability to define colors, named colors. So you use this pragma here to define a color, and it gets replaced here. Like for instance, I extract the color palette out of the cover art, and then I create a background with 3 gradients here, and the colors are from the palette are defined here in code, defined in code and exported so that the entire thing gets reloaded. And these colors are expanded to the required color. You can apply your knowledge of web CSS, but you cannot expect that the entire thing is gonna be the same. Bundle and browse into my app. The nice bit is that you can literally bundle a web browser inside your GTK application, and it's still gonna be more lightweight than shipping Electron or Chrome or Chromium. So let me see. Actually, I think I remember one thing. It was Tauri. Yeah, it was Tauri. It's basically web applications inside a GTK application that uses WebKit GTK. So this one is kind of a doozy. Oh yes, this is Firefox. I'm still using Firefox. I haven't used other browsers in a while now. I should try and go back to try not go back because I never actually used it as a matter of fact. But I should try and use GNOME Web for a little bit more so I can report bugs. I'm sure the maintainers will love it. Okay, so let me see if the merge request worked out. Yep, it did. So let's merge it. I have another couple of merge requests there. This one. As far as I know, Tauri uses GTK on Linux. It doesn't use, because WebKit GTK only works on Linux. It uses other frameworks on Windows. I think it used to use Edge, an embedded Edge on Windows. These days is more complicated because, of course, Edge has gone Chromium. But I think they have other ways of dealing with that. Still, if you end up relying on Edge on Windows, you're using the system copy of Edge, which means you're not spawning a completely separate instance of Chromium for every application, which is a little bit better. And I wanted to land this one as well. So never be said that GNOME developers do not add settings. And this merge request adds a setting. It's a very simple setting. Nevertheless, I'm adding a setting. Okay. And for this one, okay, this one is gonna be, it fixes the nice bug. I need to land this, but it's incomplete. Okay. If you don't mind, I can pick this one. I mean, come on. It's a nice bug. I cannot leave it there. What keyboard switches do you have? I Flix taken, and also I have, I think, cherry red. Let me double check. No, cherry brown. Sorry. Yeah, it's my keyboard is a Keychron K2 with cherry brown switches. And it's very purple. Let me see if I can. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, there it is. So yeah. The main problem with the Keychron is that it's I mean, I have it set up in a way, I think it's still set up on the macOS, like it's recognized as a macOS keyboard, which plays a little bit of a trick with the detection of the function key, and I haven't found a way to fix it so that it how's it called, so that it doesn't mess with the function keys and the FN key. It's kind of a blah. The Keychron are really good keyboards, honestly, from quality to like how it's assembled, how it works. The Linux support is even good. This one has a little bit of an issue with that. I don't know if I need to spend some more time like figuring it out. Right now, I don't particularly care. It's good enough, and also it's not loud, as loud as I as my previous mechanical keyboard. I had blue switches for that one, and they were super fucking loud. I literally had to. I work from my home office, and my my bedroom and my partner's bedroom is right next to the home office, which means that every time I started typing a little bit like faster, I would wake them up, and it wasn't great. So I had to close doors on 2 different rooms to avoid waking them up. Not super fun. Yeah, let's try and see if we can fix this. So let's close this, and let's switch to the main branch. Okay. Okay, so first of all, let's rebase it on top of main. Okay. And then we want to go inside the playback control and change the repeat mode tooltip here. So we get the repeat button. We have to go back inside the window. Here. This one is how do we call it? Enable repeat buttons set bit text I18N repeat all. Oops. Set repeat. There you go. Okay, of course, changing branch needs to update the crates index, and my stream is going to crawl to a halt because I'm contending CPU with OBS. The audio is going to be perfectly fine, which is great. As I've been told by multiple streamers, the important bit is not the video, but it's the sound. If the sound is choppy, it's going to be terrible, but if the video is choppy, it's fine. Okay. And then we'll probably have to merge a bunch of commits there. But yeah, it doesn't cost anything to merge a bunch, to modify, to pick up an existing merge request if the person that opened it doesn't really know how it works. This is going to be a failure. Yeah, because it's nullable. Ugh. So it's going to be some blah blah blah. It would be nice if the auto fill for the parentheses would and the braces would find the corresponding end of the line and add the enclosing parenthesis at the end of the statement instead of near the open parenthesis. That would be more helpful at the very least. Oh. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay. Come on. But I asked to recompile everything is annoying. To be honest, it's the only slightly annoying bit of Rust at the moment. Which is, of course, like nothing because incremental like builds are still possible. So it's just the first time, and every time you switch to a branch. So this one is repeat mode. I need to change that. Repeat all tracks. Repeat the current track. And enable repeat. So I need to change that in the window UI. No, the playback control UI. That would be tooltip text. Enable repeat. I'd also need to change the accessibility stuff, but the accessibility API I need to double check in Rust because I designed it a little bit on the C side. And I don't know if the language bindings have written their own wrappers around it. Also, thanks for the follow, Daniel. Which means there's a new goal. And yeah, so, okay. Yeah, it doesn't entirely matter because the tooltip text will be used as the accessible description of the widget anyway. So it's fine. This is going to be a label, so it's going to be button repeat mode, and then if you ask for the description, it will be enable repeat or and so on and so forth. So that's fine as it is. So let's see. And then we are going to do this. I don't like the GitLab the GitLab apply suggestion behavior. It's a little bit unbaked, not entirely useful, unless you also modify the commit message every time you do it, or you collect a bunch of changes inside the same commit. But even then, I find it a little bit on the bad side. So where do I put it? Is the UI format close to HTML? Not really. The UI format is a serialization format provided by GTK. It's a simple XML like format that has just that describes objects in that GTK can create for you. You create an object, you set the properties. If the object is a widget, you can define the child, each child of the widget, and then you can define style classes to apply, and you can define accessibility properties to define, and so on and so forth. It applies to any object there. It's a little bit boring to structure here because it's the same. So it's not. You can get lost into it. You can also define menus here with this and other element type menus section items and attributes here. Yeah, it's a serialization format. You describe your UI in this XML format, and GTK will build it for you instead of doing that in code. How do I push to it? I can open a new one. Let me git branch. Can rename it to playback tooltips. Okay. And then I can rename it to be add tooltips to the playback tools. It says 69. Nice. I've rebased your merge request and opened 42 with the additional I've kept your original commits. So we have this. As soon as it finishes, do you prefer to do in code or like that? I honestly prefer to well, it's a mix, but in general I do prefer to structure my UIs using UI definition files that map to specific subclasses of GTK widgets and in general objects. So for instance, in this case, I'm creating a playback control widget here. There is a template type, which means that I create also a class, a derived type of GTK widget that contains all the reference to all the children that define in the UI type, in the UI definition file. And GTK will load the UI definition XML for me at construction time and will apply everything, and it will do all the assignment. In this case, the bindings will do the assignment, but they are calling into GTK API, so it works also in C and Python and any other language binding that GTK has. So the end result is that I define the UI for the composite widget, and GTK will load it for me and when the composite widget is created. And for instance, in this case, the playback control widget is referenced from the window UI definition file here, playback control here. So I create the window, which contains widgets that are either provided by GTK or are custom that I made for this particular application, like the song detail widget, the playback control widget, the playlist view. And everything is built together, is assembled and put together by GTK at construction time. And in this case, it's very easy to maintain an application because the entire thing is, it can be, if it grows above a certain threshold, I can take it, put it inside a custom widget, and then don't have to care about it. And the UI file is embedded inside a binary blob. In C, I could literally inject it into the binary, the final binary, or if I'm writing a library, I could inject it inside the library itself. In the case of Rust, is a little bit more difficult to do because I cannot compile this into a Rust string, a binary, a byte array. I could do it using like an include directive, include bytes macro. I could do it. I could include the generated bytes into the final binary, so I don't have to install a separate file. But that would require recompiling the entire application every time I changed a property, for instance. Instead, in this case, I can change a property. It will regenerate the binary blob with all the resources for this application, and that blob gets loaded at runtime when the application starts. So it's more convenient when developing. But in theory, I could take it and say, okay, in release mode, instead of loading this as a separate file that gets installed, I will include it inside the final binary, so it doesn't have that particular cost as well. cough cough, and I forgot to unmute myself. Well, I pressed the button and it didn't unmute correctly. But yeah, as I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted by my microphone muting itself. Today has been a very, very good day. There were a lot of changes that landed, and I'm pretty happy about them. Yeah, it's almost 7:15, so I will have to stop here because I will have to make dinner and then eat. It's a little bit late. In any case, yeah, I think it's time for the usual outro for the YouTube crowd. So without further ado, if you enjoy watching me suffer through writing Rust code or C code and working on GTK and the GNOME platform, or writing application or writing documentation for the platform, then why not subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I upload the VODs of my Twitch streams. Or if you want to watch me doing this live, then you can actually follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/ebasi, where I stream usually on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then upload the VODs on YouTube. And if you want to, then basically just leave a comment or join the chat on Twitch. And I'm happy to answer questions about the GNOME community or the GNOME software development platform. For everybody else still here, thank you very much for following along. I had a lot of fun. Also, lots of fun of answering questions. So again, feel free to ask them anytime I'm streaming. And have a fantastic rest of your Monday. And I shall see you all again, hopefully on Wednesday. Bye.